hour or so, 45 minutes to 1 hour or so, to look into those areas. Now, because of the sensitivity of my location currently, I will not be turning on my video. I'll probably just go with the audio and with my slides as time progresses. So please, I need you to bear with me as we continue. Thank you. So I'll be sharing my slides. Give me a couple of minutes, 10 seconds to get that done. Bibitayo, I think it makes me remove some.
Yes, please. You I've done that already. You can go ahead.
Yeah, just give me a few seconds. Still please, can you see my screen now? Confirm if you can see my screen. Hello? Hello? Can you guys?
No. Your screen is not yet, please. Please, let's just give her a few seconds to pull up her slide.
Yeah, actually, happening.
Oh, sorry, logged me out. Hello, sorry. I noticed the system logged me, so I'm gonna try to leave and back. Are we still here? Can you guys hear me? Hello? Hear me, please. Anyone?
Yes, we can
We can hear you.
Thank you for responding. I said I was logged out earlier, so because of the network. Okay, let me attempt sharing my screen again. Hello, I need you to confirm if you can see my screen. Ola, are you there?
We
Please come.
can't see your screen yet.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay, Nana, can you just send it to me? Let me probably do that also from my hand.
Okay. Give me a couple of minutes. Hello, good evening.
So we want to quickly apologize for um that that technical glitch. So I will be pulling up the slides in a few seconds.
Okay. I just sent it to you on WhatsApp.
Yes,
Have you received them yet?
yes, I'm sharing it right away. Please confirm you
Okay.
can see.
Give that. Hold on. Come in.
Please, can anyone confirm that you can see my
We
screen?
can see it now. We can see your
Yes,
screen.
we can see it.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I can also see it. So are we good to go?
Yes, please.
All right. Once again, we already know what the topic and what we are here for. So you can go to the next slide, please. Okay. So I have outlined some of the things that we will be looking at the end of this section with me. We'll be able to understand some of the key concepts of data protection and privacy. We'll understand the key principles of data protection, know about data subject rights, and all of this, as I have listed here as our objectives. We'll be looking at them from the standpoint of startups, either as a founder, either as an investor, or even an employee within the ecosystem, just to give you heads up on what is happening in case it is new to you, and also to maybe refresh your memory if you already know some of these things, or to give you some insider information on what to do and how to progress from it. So please, before I go on, I want to say that in Nigeria, from what we've seen so far, there has been a lot of startups coming up. It's as if every day you hear news about startups. They're making headlines and they're making waves. You see investors, angel investors, and whatever series they are, whether series A, B, or C, they're pulling a lot of funds that you're beginning to wonder, where is all this money coming from? You hear things like one startup just pulled up $1 billion. That's quite a figure, and uh, most of the times these startups have high objectives. They start with high potentials, like they look like they're going to do a lot of things, and few years down the line you're already hearing that, oh, this startup is going to close down, it's shutting down, and there are a lot of factors that could result in it. And I can say from observation of what has been happening and my few research that I did in preparation for this section, I could say that compliance is one of those top issues for startups in Nigeria and for the global scene as well. Compliance, with laws have always played a major role, especially with the advent of technology. A lot of countries are beginning to see how they can govern companies in the technological space. So we hear of data protection, uh, data protection laws, AI laws, these laws are targeted at regulating internet marketing and every other thing that can happen. So since I'm talking more from the African and Nigeria to be specific sector, I've noticed that most of what happens in the fintech space in Nigeria, in the startup space in Nigeria, we can attribute it, majority of the startups can be categorized into the industry of finance. So you have a lot of fintechs. Before you count edutech platforms, before you count 10 edutech platforms, you must have counted at least 6 or 7 fintech startups. And we're looking at these organizations that probably started, as for Nigeria, they started without much knowledge or probably grounded knowledge on compliance. This is why a section like this is very vital for you to know. So when we see, from what we've seen so far and what I've said concerning on in the startup space, you'll be able to agree with me that they require lots of information to build. When you think about a fintech, for instance, fintech like OPay, let's talk with OPay. OPay works with financial data. They work with BVN, they work with customer bank account, the number. Although people will say you don't need a BVN and to register. Initially, you didn't need a BVN, but now I think you do, especially if you're a business, if you're opening a business account, you do need your BVN to even register. You ask you for your NIN and some details about you. All of those are them interfacing with personal information of the test subject. It could either be very, very personal identifiable, like a common name, email address, home address, or it could be financial data like the one I've mentioned earlier. And I know that even OPay issues cards now. They have ATM cards they can use. That means that they have some sort of interswitch and card provider services that I know OPay has to collaborate with other people, to other companies in that space to be able to pull off. So you see that there's a lot of information moving within the ecosystem, a lot of use of personal data of their customers to run their systems. And outside that, what they do in terms of service delivery, they will need to examine their statistics, what's happening, how did we perform, what demographics are we looking at, who are our users, are we looking at early 20s, are we looking at teenagers? So they will continuously run statistics. That means they're doing research and study with personal information. So whatever we look at it, in whatever way we look at it, we cannot exclude them from what is happening in the data system. Like they work so much with information, and they also need to be aware of the relevant laws, the provisions of the laws that relates to this information. So with that introductory breakdown, I'd like us to go deeply into our discussion when you look at privacy. So understanding data protection and privacy. In Nigeria and most of our laws, when you have a holistic look at them, you will realize that there is a common interception, there's an interchangeable use. When you hear data protection, you could easily say data privacy. But from some of our experts in the field, they've tried to create the distinction between these two. So whichever way we want to look at it, I want to start by saying that when you hear data protection and privacy, you should look at it from how it's originated, the original, the historical background of those two concepts can be drawn back to the European use of the words and the US use of the word. So when you look at the European scene, you hear data protection because their experiences their experiences and focus were drawn to organizations and trying to protect individuals from undue identification of targeted persons. Now you can be traced back to the Holocaust, the killing of the Jews. And what happened was that they used the religious background and inclination of people to target a certain group of people, and they tried to do a lot of things that we know in history went down. So when you look at it from that angle, it's trying to protect people from some organizations that want to use their personal data for whatever reason that is probably not in line with the provisions of the law. Then for the US, year of privacy laws, because the US government it's so versatile and it requires a lot of information, year of surveillance and monitoring of citizens' activities. So it became a thing for the government, for laws to be made to protect the government, to ensure that the lives and daily activities of the US citizens were made private. So in a way, those laws came from there. But for modern understanding of what it is becoming today, you could say that data privacy is the legal aspect, while data protection is the technical aspect. So you say privacy will remind you of all the laws and legislations, while protection could remind you of the things that would be done in order under the law to protect the individual. However, I've come up with this particular one. Data protection itself says it's primarily on the measures and mechanisms implemented to safeguard against unauthorized access, breaches, or losses. Why data privacy means empowering individuals, which is data subjects, to make their own decisions about who can access their data and for what purposes. So from a breakdown of everything I've said so far, you could see that protection is them trying to protect the information, while privacy is empowering the data subject, which we are going to learn about later on, to be able to control who has access and who can make decisions and what kind of decisions they can make when it comes to their personal information. So I want to give us this why background, because for everything we do in this life, we need to have a why, right? So why do we need data protection? Why is it important? I have said here that it protects privacy and the rights of individuals. It ensures compliance with relevant data protection laws. It protects trust between organizations and individuals. And then also for avoidance of financial penalties and other reputational damages that may occur within the organization. All right, please, you can move on to the next slide. So this is a matrix of that I drew up on one of these tech governance sites. It was trying to enumerate the key metrics for startups in Nigeria and in Africa generally. So we're looking at startups that have we have a total of 19,000 and above startups across Africa. And most of this funding, this total funding is about 827 million. Now that's in dollars, by the way. Then these funded companies that are from privately funded, we're looking at 17,000 and 1,400 and above. And then for startup companies that have been successful over time, we're looking at top 96. So basically, this is just the statistics. I think I talked about this in the introductory part. So we'll just move on to the next slide. Please, let's go to the next slide. So let's begin to look into some of the key concepts in data protection. These are things that I will be saying and be using in the course of our conversation today. Meanwhile, let me say here that anytime I say data protection and privacy, I am using them interchangeably in our context. So whenever you hear me say those, just know that I am using it interchangeably. All right. So the first thing is personal data. What is personal data? Personal data has been defined to mean any information relating to an individual that can an identifiable or that can be used to identify an individual directly or indirectly. Now, what this means is that any information that you can use to identify a person, an individual. Let's say your name, for example, my name is Ezekiel and Ezekiel Bibitayo introduced themselves as Bibitayo Ojo. Once you put in any of our names on the search bar on Google Chrome or any browser, you definitely will see something about us. That means that you can be able to use it to identify us directly. Same goes for your images, videos, your voice notes, email address. These are personal identifiable information. You see personal information, which is PI, also as saying one and the same. Next, who is the owner of? I said Bibitayo is the name. Bibitayo Joe, the full name, can be used to identify him. That means that he is a data subject under the relevant laws. So data subject, whenever you hear data subject, just know that they are referring to a particular individual that can be identified or is identifiable either directly or indirectly through information relating to that person. Right, moving on to data processing. What is data processing? Data processing simply means any operation or set of operations performed on personal data throughout the data lifecycle. Now, I wanted to rush into defining data cycle, but lifecycle, but I will put a pause on it, and I will just say stick to defining data processing. So data processing, like I've said, is everything that relates to what you do with the personal information. Now, the life cycle here includes from collection, from the moment you collect it to the moment you store it, you transfer it, you archive it, and to the point you delete. That is the full data life cycle. To the point to do all of that. What the whole process entails is data processing. So, and the startups in Nigeria that using OPay as the example, from the time you open the app and you put in your name, you have put in your person using the platform, you've logged into it. OPay has collected your personal information, so that makes you their data. So they've used it to open an account for you, and you can now make transactions on it that are in practical use. So what is data controllers? We could say who are data controllers because most of the times they're identified as individuals purpose and means of processing personal data. So if a company decides to, a startup in this case, we still use OPay again. If OPay decides that it wants to use your personal data for the purpose of opening an account to enable you run financial transactions, it means that OPay is the one who decides the aim. That makes it a data controller. So whoever sits down and decides the aim and purpose for some personal information at their disposal, a data controller. The next set of persons that you look at is the data processor. The data processor is the person who processes the information on behalf of the data controller. So let's use OPay again. OPay has opened your account. It has given you the platform. Now you can access the app. But now you want to collect your card. You need an OPay card. And OPay cannot do that. So they probably want to partner with one of these card service providers like Visa, MasterCard, Verve. They want to do that. What they do is they give your information to those people for the purpose of doing that. What they have done is they have given information which they have collected by deciding what to do with it, and they've given it to somebody to help them prepare your card. In that situation, whoever is processing your card with your information that was given to OPay initially becomes a data processor. So whoever is the card company that wants to collect the card details from OPay to process and prepare your card becomes a data processor. So now, finally, I've come to data lifecycle. What is the data lifecycle? Like I mentioned earlier, data lifecycle simply has to do with the various stages that your personal information passes through within the system. So from the moment they are either collected or created. Now, by the way, it's not just information. It's not just collection that is the beginning. Information can also be created from scratch.
And what's the plan for this uni?
I think this person should mute. I don't know who's the person, but so information can be collected or created or collected. So let's say, for example, a photography or a modeling agency, they take photographs of their models and they put on their gallery online. Probably they have a modeling agency where they run bookings via application, their website, or they have an app for it. What they've done is they've created images of their models. That means that they did not collect the information originally, but it was created. So from the creation of that image to the time where those images are deleted from the platform, that process, the entire process of creation, collection, use, storage, archive, and deletion is known as the data life cycle. National Data Protection Authority, with the Data Protection Authority, these are the regulatory bodies that monitor the use and access of companies that you process personal information, like any other body set up by the Act or the Commission, set up by the Act that enabling them. For Nigeria, the Data Protection Authority in Nigeria is the NDPC, that's the Nigeria Data Protection Commission. And so many other African countries also have their data protection authorities. Kenya has a data protection office, commissioner. South Africa also have their own regulatory body. Most African countries that have data protection laws equally have data protection authorities. Nigeria did not have with the NDPR, but with the inception of the NDPA, they had the regulatory body to do that instead of the bureau. So Nigeria has the Data Protection Commission as their regulator. Please let's move on to the next slide. Oh God. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So let's look at the categories of personal data. Oh my God, I'm seeing that I'm so behind time. So I have to speed up. The first category is the normal personal data, which is identifiable personal data. Personal information like your name, your date of birth, your gender identity, your driver's license, your passport number, your national number, your address, home and work, your phone number. All these are your personal address. They are personal identification, your email address. They are personal. The names cards sensitive. There's a special category that is identified as sensitive personal information, which is a health information like your medical records, your health insurance, generic information. This has to do with your genotype, your blood group, your DNA, fingerprints as well came into this from recent decisions on courts and legislation. They've included your fingerprint as well. Then you have a sexual orientation, whether you are you've decided that I don't want to identify as a particular sex, or that would be sensitive to you, or your sexual orientation, you prefer some sort of sex styles that maybe if a dating app, in this case, if a dating app was to ask you, oh, your probable mate, your match, let me use that word, probable match need this particular information from you, you have to give to them, right? So it's quite sensitive what you do. Then the next, philosophical beliefs. These also fall within sensitive information. Remember, when I was giving us the introduction, I said something about the Holocaust and how religious beliefs were used to identify a certain set of people, and they were victimized, they were murdered in the most gruesome way imaginable because of their targeted use of their religion. Then we have ethnic and racial origin, political orientation, membership of trade union. This may look like it's funny, but it's actually a thing in the world because everybody has a trade. Now, it's sensitive in a way when you look at the fact that some organizations, even in our streets, you hear something like the motorcyclists, cyclists, drivers, Road Transport Association of Nigeria. So with that, somebody can be able to identify you and decide, okay, you don't belong to our association, you don't want to vote. Their criminal history also has been judicially identified as personal information. So when you look at it, let's apply it to the startup space. In the startup space, every startup, whether they like it or not, they deal with the first category of data I mentioned. They deal with it. It's something they even look at it when you talk about driver's license. You sometimes need to process your information, and you want to talk about identification. So that is the means of identification in Nigeria. So you may ask for it, and you may not have your NIN, so you may put in that one. So all of that is one of the, mostly all, at least you must have a good percentage of the first category. Then for the second category, we'll begin to look at whether the organization is into a particular sector. And if you're looking at medtech, you want to use your health information to process your health insurance. Let's say they're tracking the drugs you have to take. They have to look at your medical history. They have to look at your blood group and all. That makes it compulsory. That makes it compulsory for them to require that kind of information from you. Let's move on to the next slide quickly. Hello, next slide, please. All right, thank you. So we want to look at some of the privacy laws globally, the global, and first of all, the fundamental privacy law that became a comprehensive law globally recognized is the GDPR. Yeah, the GDPR has a scope that applies to European countries, and every member of the EU states. What it means is that if a startup is processing information belonging to people who are in France, but in France, they are in France, but they are processing information belonging to a Nigerian. Yeah, the Nigerian laws will apply the same way for the EU. Every person, the scope covers the citizens, not just the jurisdiction. So even if it means that you are a citizen outside of the country, a European a citizen of the United Kingdom is in Nigeria, and you're processing this information, probably he uses OPay in Nigeria because he feels it's easier for him, it would mean that the EU laws will operate, to take effect when it comes to how the organization uses its personal data. That's how it works across most of the countries. So we have the US, for example. The US has more, what do you call it? Decentralized laws. So they have laws that regulate different sectors. Most of the famous ones are the HIPAA, the Health Information Protection, Health Information Protection Act. We have the HIPAA. We have the California Consumer Privacy Law, which has been constantly being amended over time. Its amendments is almost like yearly because they are trying to meet up with digital landscape and what's happening in the tech ecosystem. Then when you come to Africa, Nigeria to be specific, the first law that has a hat in general is Section 37, provides for the rights of privacy of homes, telephone conversations. One of the most beautiful things about that law is that it took cognizance of telephone and other forms of communication. So in a way, most of the persons who talk about laws, they tend to interpret it to include even technological use of information. So after that, we have, we used to have the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, which is being appealed now, which is currently being appealed by the guide. Once it comes into effect by September, General Data Protection Regulation will no longer apply. Now, application and implementation. And we also have some guardian notices that have been released by the NDPC in terms of use of social media by public institution, code of conduct for data protection compliance organizations, and other African countries like the Malabo Convention. You have the African Union Charter, all of that. We also have one ECOWAS article that regulates data protection in Nigeria. So please, let's move on to the next slide. So in doing all of this, the startups should be reminded about the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, because they are one of the institutions currently that are giving a lot of, let me say, headache. I want to use headache because I'm speaking from the side of someone who works with the startups, because they are not joking when it comes to consumer protection, when it comes to how you use your client's information online. They are so heady about it, they are headstrong, and they're not going to back down anytime soon. So whenever you think of a startup, always think of whether you work as a startup or you're listening to me, you're already a founder, or you are thinking of founding one, you should probably ask your startup or your employer or yourself as a founder, ask your team, your compliance team, about these laws and the provisions of these laws before you go ahead, so somebody does not slam you with a fine or ask you to call back certain actions that you have taken that you know would favor your business. So I've said I will do a brief overview of the Data Protection Act, the legal framework in Nigeria. So it establishes the Data Protection Commission, as I said, as authority, the authority for data protection in Nigeria, divided into 6. I think these are technical components that really would talk about if I was in the compliance class with compliance officers. But I will just breeze by because it is not really the core of our topic, but it was insisted that I talk about it. So the operational effect is that it has repealed the NDPR, and NDPR is no longer in force at this moment. So let's go ahead. Please, next slide. So one of the objectives of the Act is that it was to provide as a governing framework for the country. It's the one that should govern data protection in Nigeria. It ensures for the rights of data subjects. And prescribed means for data security actually lays on it. It also looks at cross-border data transfer.
I stopped hearing her. I wouldn't know. Could any other person hear her?
Yeah, hello, sorry. I muted that intentionally due to the background noise in the background. So I needed to quieten if I
Okay. Hello, Nana. Can you still hear her? Um, I guess that her environment currently is not so comfortable. I guess so. Hello. Hello, Nana. Um, okay. So I don't know what exactly is going on there, but why um she's trying to get back on the core. So let me just quickly say something. Um, After Nana is done with her home part, I am going to just share with us some practical things that um, should be implemented, especially if you have online presence. So, for instance, if you have um, a website, yes, or a mobile application. So, I will show us few things that are very important to have on your website. So, for instance, the privacy notice, the cookies notice, and also if you have deployed any digital form on your website, what are the necessary implementations that you should put around it to comply with data protection laws, not just in Nigeria, but across the globe. So data protection across the globe is aimed on data protection principles and they are universal. So not just Nigeria alone. If you check the GDPR, you will see similarities between GDPR and the Nigerian Data Protection Act. Same thing applies to some other jurisdiction. So I will be doing that when Nana is done with her home part. Oh, I just want to confirm if she's back. Uh, Nana, please, can you hear me? Okay, I don't think she's here again. Probably she's still having technical issues with her network or devices. So, but not to waste our time, let me just go on from where she stopped. So she was discussing the objective of data protection, Nigerian Data Protection Act, and haven't mentioned governance framework, right of data subject, data security, cross-border transfer of personal data. What are the requirements and requirement that set up the obligation of data controllers and data processor of major importance, um, the compliance, infringement, penalties, and this. So basically, these are the objectives that the Act seek to achieve, and it is on the premise of this objective that most of the things we'll be discussing that are relevant to startup are based. So, yes, applicability of the act. The act is um, basically applies to data controllers, data processors. So let me just say it applies to Nigerians. It applies to organizations that processes data of Nigerians, both within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. So, for instance, where this will become more relatable, if you remember last year, Meta, the um, previous Facebook, was fined by the Nigerian Data Protection Act with the FCCPC, Federal Consumer Competition Act. Uh, so now the Meta was fined 220 million naira, and you'll be wondering, are they a Nigeria? Is Meta a Nigeria company or what? So that was just because Meta was processing data of Nigerians, both within and outside Nigeria. So that is how the act applies to individual. It applies to data controller. So basically, data controller uh, are the organizations that determine what data is to be collected from you and what purpose is that data supposed to be used for. So data processor carried out the instruction of a data controller. So it applies to data controller, data processor, both within and outside Nigeria. It applies to Nigerians, basically. Okay, exception of the applicability. So there are instances where some rights and obligations that you as an individual, a data subject, might not, your right might be suspended at a point, and also the right of a data controller might also be suspended as at a point depending on different circumstances. So for instance, law enforcement is one of there. So basically we have some legal basis for processing data. So for one of it is legal obligation. So under legal obligation, at times you're right, you might not really be able to exercise some right just because you are under authority and the authority needs to carry out their own obligation. So in line of that, I can also bring in security issues, national security. Your right might be suspended just because of national security. Um, Public interest, right? Uh, a good example is during COVID, you have rights, right? You have right to um, privacy and the likes, but just because of the interest of the public, you might need um, to relinquish your right at a particular point. So not to so I know quite all right that we are talking basically about um, data protection for startup. So we are going into this explanation just for us to be to have a good background. I know we have mixed audience, right? So in as much as some people have been through this introductory part before, um, we don't still want to we still want to be able to uh, provide value to people that are just getting it for the first time. So okay, I think at this junction, I may just have to go on with my own slide. I don't know what exactly is wrong on the other hand. So just give me a few seconds. Let me pull up my own slide. Okay, don't mind me. My own slide might be a bit technical. Okay, so I won't just let me just continue from um yes, let me continue from the principles of data protection, principles of data processing. So, having understood the importance of data protection, now you as an organization, you want to you want to process data. Before you go ahead processing data, what are the necessary things you need to look into? What are the necessary things that you have to prioritize to be able to comply with necessary laws and regulation that regulates data protection in your jurisdiction. So first, lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. When we say lawfulness, that means you're processing data lawfully. What the purpose of data processing is lawful, right? You're also processing data in a fairly manner and also in a transparent manner. So everything we'll be discussing revolves around these 7 principles. So if you're and you can't reach them in isolation. You can't say I have complied with fairness, transparency, and lawfulness. I don't have issue with I the other ones do not bother me. No, every of these principles needs to work hand in hand for you to have a robust data protection framework. So when we say purpose limitation, what do we mean? Don't forget that you're collecting data for a particular purpose. Now, you're you cannot use data for another purpose aside the particular purpose you collected it for at the initial point of collection. So, for instance, as a fintech, well, let me use yes, let me use medtech as an example. You collected data of patient just for administering medical services to them. But after sometimes probably you need to do marketing, you need to you need that data for statistic, and probably you need to send it to another organization. You need it for a whole lot of a particular operation that is quite different from the reason why you collect it. So what we are saying is the data you collect at initial point of collection must not be used for another purpose that is quite different from what you collected it for. So, and all these are made known to data subjects at the point of collection through the privacy policy of the organization. So when we talk about data minimization, we are saying that the data you collect, so I understood the fact that we have NGOs in this call, we have different organization, profit organization and non-profit organization. So the information you are collecting from from a data subject, say your beneficiary, your customer, your client, participant in your program, that data should be minimized to, should be limited to what you need it for. You should limit data to, you should limit data to what it's necessary for processing or for serving them, for providing service to such an individual. So, for instance, I don't know why, uh, let me say, an NGO now, I don't know why an NGO would be requesting for my BVN or my mother's maiden name. So, what we are saying basically is informations that are not necessary to provide that service. So, for instance, when you are applying, when you're registering for this program, we only ask for your name and email address. So, no need. In fact, we're not even so much interested in the organization you are joining from, right? So, accuracy is saying that the data you collect should be accurate. So, for fintechs, you will understand this better, the essence of you updating your KYC information periodically. And also, generally, for organizations that collect personal data, you should ensure that the information you're collecting from data subjects are accurate. So it might be you documenting those information, and at the point of documenting, you should ensure that the information you are documenting are correct. So, for instance, my name is Bibitayo. If I tell you Bibitayo, if you are documenting it, you are under obligation not to document a wrong thing. So don't tell me tomorrow that you mistakenly document Ibitayo, because Ibitayo is not my name. Storage limitation. This speaks to retention policy of your organization. How long do you want to keep that information? The information of people you've collected for business, for transactions, or- for your programs, project statistics. For how long do you want to keep it? Basically, under Nigerian data protection laws and regulation, you don't keep data more than 5 years. So different organization and then sector might also have their own different retention policy. For instance, financial institutions generally in Nigeria have to keep data for 5 years, and after 5 years, you you take it to the archive because of the sensitivity of financial transaction. Tomorrow, EFCC might need financial record, and you have to provide it. So you don't delete data, you don't dispose data in financial institutions. You have to keep it in the archive. The same thing applies to insurance sector. Their own is 10 years, and because of the sensitivity of those information. Um, Integrity and confidentiality speaks to the fact that the data you collect should, nothing should tamper with that data. It, in fact, you should be able to produce the same data that I gave you anytime, any day, maybe based on my request or based on the request of regulatory authority, for instance, in financial institution, the EFCC, the ICPC, depending on circumstances. And also, the confidentiality part of it is that you, I have given you information, right? You have to keep my information confidential. Even if you are sharing it with any other party, it has to be confidential. And a whole lot of things revolve around integrity and confidentiality. That's where comes in the principle of CIA and cybersecurity. We'll be delving into cybersecurity part of this discussion next week. I want to encourage that you also join us next week. So data protection revolves around two areas: the organizational measure and the technical measure. Technical measure speaks to information security, how you can keep information secure, how you can ensure the principle of um, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So the last principle here is accountability. Accountability speaks to your organizational measure, basically policies and procedures that you have put in place to ensure compliance with data protection laws and regulation. So I mentioned earlier that there are now you have understood the principles that guides data processing. Apart from the principles, we now have legal basis for processing data. So, and I will tell you that every organization that collects personal data is processing data on either of all these principles. But if you don't know, you may not know how to implement necessary frameworks that you need to put in place. So, for instance, the first one I have here is consent. Uh, yes, sorry. Consent. Consent is necessary, and every point of collection, you need to procure consent. Okay, so let me just say this. Depending on what data you are processing, depending on the collection, depending on what you want to use the data for, um, depending on what you want to use data for, right? It is not in all instances that you process data based on consent. Consent is, oh, I accept that you process my data. But I can tell you that in almost all data processing, you cannot really take away consent. We will see it later on. So when you are processing data based on consent, you must your consent must be freely, you don't collect consent under duress. Consent should be freely given. So I don't want to go into some technical areas. Consent should be freely given. Uh, Something is happening currently in Europe, the issue of pay, consent or pay. And there has been a lot of discussion around that. So there are instances where it's either you consent to data processing or you have to pay something if you are not going to consent to data processing. So, but I don't want to go into anything more technical because of the sensitivity of this audience. So, but for strategic session, if you really want to know much about data protection, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I can direct you to the right persons that will help. Like Nana is a managing partner of having LP. I also does the same thing, right? But also for proximity sake, if I cannot attend to you, or if she cannot attend to you, any one of us can attend to you. So, but what I'm trying to say in a sense, legal basis for processing data, you are processing data based on any of these six. Legitimate interest was added recently when Nigerian Data Protection Act came to being in 2023. It used to be 5 under the NDPR. So you can also process data based on fighter interest. Fighter interest, this comes basically during, it applies during emergency situation. So for instance, you as a medical healthcare center, you you receive an emergency and you have to treat that patient, you have to collect information of that person and treat that person based on fighter interest. Tomorrow, the person cannot come to you and say, oh, I don't give you permission to use my data for medical purposes. You be able to rely on fighter interest. So we have contract. So you can also process data based on contractual relationship with another um, person or organization. Legal obligation is what I described earlier, instance where um, a law enforcement agency have to process your data. So for instance, EFCC is coming to request for your information from a fintech. You can't say, oh, I don't agree to that. So they are doing it under legal obligation. And then legitimate interest is quite interesting because it speaks to interception of the interest of organization and the interest of the data subject. So instance where so this is a new area in our law in Nigeria, and it has not actually been put to test very well. So one of the things that is very, very important I want to point out here is if you are processing data on the legitimate interest of a data subject, you have to conduct legitimate interest assessment. Legitimate interest assessment will help you to document whether it is necessary to go ahead with such processing, whether there's going to be an infringement of the rights of a data subject. So as an organization, no matter where you fall, even if you are no matter what organization you fall into, no matter data processing activity that is going on under your umbrella, you cannot escape processing data on under any of this. So going to the next slide, Nana already mentioned the Nigerian Data Protection Framework, the Nigerian Data Protection Act, the Nigerian Data Protection Act, General um, Application and Implementation Directive. So you can scan this and get a copy of the two. So today I can tell you categorically that these are the major data protection framework that regulates the space in Nigeria. Although if you process data of um, data subjects from other jurisdictions like Kenya, say Kenya, you will still need to comply with the Data Protection Act of Kenya. South Africa, you still need to comply with the APOPIA. If you are now extended to, let's say, Europe, the GDPR is there. So this, but what I'm saying in essence is if you're processing Nigerian data, you need to comply with these two regulation laws and regulation. But if you're going to process data beyond Nigeria jurisdiction, then you have to consider the law that regulates data protection and privacy in other jurisdictions. So we are running um, out of time already. So let me just quickly say a few things about areas that you need to focus more attention to, and that is data protection governance. So I say here that it is a structured approach an organization take to ensure that personal data is managed lawfully, ethically, securely, and transparently. So what are we saying here? Data protection governance is the entire structure you have to ensure that you comply with data protection laws and regulation in every jurisdiction you find yourself. And I have a couple of things I want to discuss that you have to pay attention to. First of all, as an organization, you have to appoint a DPO. A DPO is a data protection officer. So a data protection officer is that guy, it is that officer, it is that personnel, it is that employee that that ensure that your organizations comply with data protection laws and regulation. That particular person drives compliance within your organization. It 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 is the same person that interface between your organizations and your organization and the commission. That's Nigerian Data Protection Commission. So assign a data protection officer. But under the act, something interesting comes up under the act, you don't need to have a particular person within your organization as a data protection officer. So a data protection officer needs to have understanding of data protection laws and regulation. And the act the act only says that you should have knowledge, but when the guide was released, we got to realize that knowledge is not enough. You have to have you need certification to be able to function in that role. And from September, when the guide will come into play fully, the regulator wants to see that every data protection officer in Nigeria have a certification in that regard. So one thing I also want to point attention to is that for an organization, you must ensure that there's enough budget for your DPO to drive compliance. I have conducted audits for several organizations cutting across fintech, HMO, medtech, yes. In fact, religion organization. I don't want to mention them. Yes, I don't want to mention it. Yes, NGO, right? Both multinationals and national NGO. So one thing I realized in practice is that sometimes DPO, if they don't have enough budget, they will not do what they're supposed to do to achieve compliance. So I will give you an instance. I work with yes, an healthcare recently. And one of the things I put in my reports was that you don't have enough resources to ensure information security, because by the time we tested their information security system, their cyber security infrastructure, I in fact I was baffled because they are processing sensitive data. Anything that happens, because sensitive data are even under the act, you are not supposed to even process sensitive data. But the only instance where you can process sensitive data is when you have fulfilled some other obligations that the act has put in place. That, for instance, explicit consent, not just consent, explicit consent. And of course, you have to make sure that you have a robust technical infrastructure to keep such data safe. So now imagine an organization where there's not enough budget to process, to protect, to store, to even conduct audit. Because not every organization is expected to conduct audit, right? But those ones that needs to conduct audit, you have to pay a consultant to do that for you, right? And some other compliance, some other things that will help you to comply. So, for instance, you might not, for a new organization, a new DPO, you might not know how to conduct data protection impact assessment, which is very, very important. So you may need to consult another organization. And Nigerian Data Protection Commission had licensed data protection compliance organizations to conduct audits on your organization, and they are also the one that are licensed to file audits on your behalf annually. So, like I said, not every organization is to file audit. I don't have time to discuss different categories, but if after this session, if you need any support, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Nana, Ikyonana, Ezekiel. You can reach out to her also on LinkedIn. So I haven't appointed the DPO. In fact, I would say the first thing, if you want to comply, is to appoint a DPO. Oh, I forgot to mention something. The act provides that you don't need to have a specific person within your organization to be a DPO. You can also outsource. For instance, you can outsource one of the organizations that are so dear to us that you will have seen the name of this flyer is DPO Africa. Sorry, data protection placement, DPO placement rather. Sorry, I have a lot of organization in my head. I'm a volunteer for DPO Africa, so I'm trying to confuse that with DPO placement. So DPO placement also outsource data protection compliance. I also can't do that. So the first thing I will encourage you to do is appoint a DPO. Then you have appointed a DPO. It is the responsibility of the DPO to now help you to achieve compliance. And one of the another thing that you should be looking at is policies and procedure. If you don't have policies and procedure, I don't know what you want to do correctly, because it's that policy that will break down what you need to do to comply with the necessary laws and regulation. So I have a couple of them here. I can I in my repository I have like 13 to 18 of them depending on different organization and different circumstances. So, but the major ones that I want to put to your face this evening, data protection policy, which regulates the entire uh, data processing within your organization. Data privacy notice. Some people call it data privacy policy. I don't even know why I put notice. I love to put privacy policy because that is what Nigerian Data Protection Act reference. So, but we use them interchangeably. So, data privacy policy or privacy notice is that document that you present to your customer, your data subject, whichever form, either your participant, your customer, your client, beneficiaries, whichever industry you are playing. So this particular information, this particular uh, this particular policy provides information to uh, data subjects about what data you collect from them, the the reason for collection, the storage facility, I mean, if the security you've put in place, and also it also point out their rights, the right they have as a data subject. So under the act, there are plethora rights accrued to a data subject. For instance, the first one is right to be informed, and you are helping them. You are fulfilling that right by presenting them your privacy notice. They have right to know, right to be informed, and you are giving them your privacy policy. And it's important that every data collection point, you must present your privacy notice to them. Um, Record of processing activity is also very, very important. This will help you to track the data collection from the data you collected from data collection to disposal. So if you have to dispose data, so this document is going to help you to understand the data you collect. You know, we mentioned sensitive data and personal data earlier. So this will help you to know what data you hold, and it will help you to even know the risk that is attached to each data, the kind of data you have. So for instance, you have collected sensitive data like health data and some other sensitive data. It's going to help you to understand that, oh, I have this data in my custody. I need to keep it safe. So there is also data breach incident management procedure. Should I tell you that in all this discussion, everything that revolves around the law, around the acts, regulation about data protection, if you are compliant, but one day there's, let's say, data breach, you have obligation under the law. Don't forget that first, you even have obligation to make sure that you keep data safe. You have a robust security infrastructure to keep data safe. Now, if at all, how outside what you've put in place, there's still a loophole and there's a data breach, what will you do? And that is what this policy is all about. It documents the procedure for containing data breach, uh, analyze assessing data breach, containing data breach, and also mitigating data breach. There are about 5 procedures that you need to go through to ensure that the needful is done. And one of it is also to report to the commission. Uh, I don't want to mention him. I I can tell you about I know about two fintechs that had data breach in the last two, one last year, the other one this year, right? And they reported to the commission, and the commission did their investigation. The thing is, it is required under the law, not just in Nigeria, even in Europe, that you must report within 72 hours from the 72 hours from the time you are aware of such breach. So now imagine if you don't report and the commission gets to know about it and they carry on their own investigation. We will talk about sanctions and penalties later. So policies and procedures are necessary. There is data subject access request procedure. There is, which one is so important that I need to let you know? So data subject access request procedure, right? There is record of processing activity I've mentioned. So right now, okay, there is DPIA and so other ones. I don't want to bore us with that. So legal and regulatory compliance, you have policies already documented, but you also still need to identify legal basis for processing data. I mentioned um, uh, legal basis for processing data earlier. You want to identify the one that applies to your own operation. You have to maintain a record of the data you are collecting. And if you are now contracting a third party to process data on your behalf, in your agreement with such third party, you have to embed a data protection clause because you cannot outsource your liability. You are the one collecting data. It's you we know. You are the one I gave my data to. If anything happens to my data, I'm going to come for you. So to protect you also, you need to protect your organization, you need to also ensure that you manage your third-party data processor very well. And one of the way to manage them is to put them, to caution them by putting obligation on them in your contract. Also, there is another area that is very, very important, cross-border data transfer. Um, Nana mentioned about it earlier. See, you cannot transfer data from Nigeria to US or to China without following the right process. And not just in Nigeria, you will realize the last month, yes, last month, TikTok was fined $530 million, right? And the reason for that fine was because they are transferring data to China unlawfully. Unlawfully. So recently also DeepSeek, I remember I wrote about DeepSeek. DeepSeek was banned in Italy, was banned in South Korea and Germany, and several other jurisdictions just because they are transferring data to China. So if you are running business in any jurisdiction, please can you still hear me? If you are still with me, you can respond with emojis. It's raining here currently in in my in my area in Lagos. I don't know about you, so please um just let me know if you can still hear me clearly. Please, can I get your response? Hello. All right. So I just got someone's response in the chat box. Uh, I should be rounding up. I should be rounding up. I should be rounding up. So let me just continue from where I stopped. Okay, so I earlier mentioned about risk management when I was talking about the third-party data processor. Yes, you have to manage your risk. And part of another thing that will help you to manage your risk is when you conduct data protection impact assessment. Like we have environmental impact assessment, we also have data protection impact assessment. It helps you to identify what risk is associated with the data you are processing. So, and under the Nigerian Data Protection Act, Section 28, it is required that you conduct data protection impact assessment when you are processing high risk, when you are processing data that have tendency to impact data subjects' rights. When you are processing data that have likelihood of posing high risk impact on your data subject. And most of the time, when you process sensitive data like locational data, you're processing geographical data, you're processing their health data, you're processing their biometrics. So for instance, you have deployed CCTV in your premises and the likes. And also, when you are deploying new technology, new product and services, it is expected that you conduct data protection impact assessment. And I will tell you from my experience with the regulatory authority, the Nigerian Data Protection Commission, in in um, in the event of any data breach, and the commission needs to step in for investigation, one of the documents they will ask you for is your data protection impact assessment. So, and that's, like I said earlier, when you in fact, beyond regulatory requirements, beyond legal requirements, data protection impact assessment is going to help you to see the entire status of your organization, whether you are compliant or you are not. And it helps you to also document mitigating measures to ensure that you are compliant. So I've discussed data breach management earlier when I was discussing data breach incident management procedure. Um, so, okay. Now, having put in place everything we've discussed so far, compliance is not a one-off thing. Compliance is a journey. We are discussing data protection compliance today. Not just data protection compliance, even for organizations like fintechs, financial institutions that are heavily regulated by CBN, and they have to comply with um, anti-money laundering regulation. Compliance generally, not just even for CAC, Corporate Affairs Commission, that you have to file annual returns every year. Compliance to laws and regulation is a continual process. So there's no end to it. And that's the reason why you need to monitor compliance periodically. So you see regulatory body like NDPC, CBN requires you to file annual audits. Like CBN will require you to file anti-money laundering audit every year for financial institutions. CAC generally will ask or require every organization registered to file annual returns. Nigerian Data Protection Commission is also requesting, or under the Act, has required that every organization file annual audit, but not all organizations. I told you there are 3 different categories earlier. So not every organization is required to file audit every year, right? But it is required that every organization register with the commission. So, but where I'm going exactly is everything we are talking about, compliance, you need to monitor compliance. And for organizations that are heavily um, regulated, congested regulations, for instance, we are discussing data protection. The financial institution will need to comply with this. They will need to comply with the requirement of FCCPC. They will need to comply with, let's say, NOTAP if they are bringing in new technology from outside Nigeria. They will need to comply with which so different regulation that applies to their industry. So as a DPO, in fact, if you are now still functioning in let's say compliance organization of your company or legal department, you should know that compliance is not a one-off thing. You don't say you've conducted audit this year, you don't need to conduct audit next year. Um, so apart from conducting audits, you are tracking privacy metric like is there anything like data breach, or if there is data breach, have we reported it? There is data subject access request, that's SAR. Is there SAR so far? How do we attend to it? It is expected it is a requirement of the law in Nigeria and Europe that you must respond to any data protection complaint within 30 days. So if you don't do that, if you don't respond to complaints, you may need your data subject might need to complain to the regulatory authority directly, and that might not end up nice. So, like I said earlier, you need to also file annual audits depending on what category you fall into. So, let me just round up by so the next thing I have on my slide is information security. We will be delving into this next week. You know, I told you earlier that data protection and privacy has two arms, the organization measures and technical measures. We'll be doing more of technical discussion next week as it relates to confidentiality, integrity, availability. We'll still be breaking this down into maybe about 6, 7 or other areas for deep discussion. So, consequence of non-compliance. Let me just go straight to what the law has provided for. There is financial penalty of up to 10 million naira or 2% of annual gross revenue of an organization in Nigeria. And I will tell you this information, this information is in the public domain. Soko loan was fined, Soko loan was fined 10 million naira in 2019. For Soko loan was this loan app that was sending unsolicited messages to family members of defaulters. And that's one of the things that FCCPC and NDPC have been able to curb over the year. You hardly hear those things happening today. I don't say they are not happening. I say you hardly hear them. So Soko loan was fined first, and they still went ahead to process data unlawfully. Mr. Olumide Babalala also sued them for 100 million naira, but the case ended and the damage of 5 million naira was awarded. Last year, Fidelity Bank was fined 550 million. They made argument against it, but I tell you for free that they paid that they don't pay exactly 550 million naira, but they were still they still paid penalty, which is not less than 100 million naira. Meta was fined. They went to tribunal, and tribunal also upheld that decision that they are still able to pay $220 million. And you know, something funny about Meta is that one of the things that they were guilty of was they were collecting metadata. So when I say metadata, they collect data through cookies. Yes, through cookies. Those informations that you are not even aware of about you. In fact, you may not even know that you have such personal information. And those are the part of the thing that came up against them. So there's reputational damage. I will tell you that there are a lot of sanctions going on. A lot of organizations has been sanctioned, but you don't get to hear them in news because the commission is quite sensitive about the economy of Nigeria. And that's why we don't make much news about the Fidelity Bank. 550 million is huge. And in fact, that's not even up to 2% of their annual gross revenue of 2023. So now imagine if they have to pay 2%, you know how huge it's going to be. So there's also legal action. Last year, there was this case between Folashade and UBA. You can search for it online, whereby she sued UBA for breach of privacy. UBA opened a domiciliary account on her behalf without her consent. PDPA IA versus Nisa Mie was a recent case. It was delivered, that judgment was delivered last month. Araka and ECAT also was a new case that speaks to data privacy and data protection in Nigeria. So all these are the major reason why we are bringing this discussion to your face, and we require that you pay attention to this as you are doing business, as you are launching your applications, as you are doing a whole lot of things in this space. So we want you to consider data protection and privacy, and we want you to pay attention to it in fact, at every point of um, development of, let's say, your technology, your products and services. It is very, very important that you take privacy with all diligence. So, like I promised earlier, I will share my screen to just quickly show you what is required of you if you have any website. If you have a website, let me show you what is expected that you have on your website. So let me use UBA. Yes, UBA as an example. So on your website, it is expected that you implement privacy policy or privacy notice. I mentioned privacy policy or privacy notice earlier. So it's expected that you put privacy notice on your website, and it's not something that should be hidden. If you also have deployed cookies on your website, it is expected that you have cookies notice also on your website. I will show us. This website is still loading. Let me show us another organization. Oh, I guess network is bad. So while I'm trying to load the website, so let me just make it open to everyone. If there is question or if there is any um, observation you want to raise, please you can just unmute yourself and speak. Hello, can anyone hear me? Do you have any questions so far? We are rounding up already.
Yes, please. I do have a question.
Okay,
Can you
thank
hear
you.
me?
Yes, I can hear you. You
Okay.
said you don't have any question.
No, I do. I do have a question.
Okay, please go on with your question.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the wonderful webinar. Yeah, I must say I have learned a whole lot. So quickly, so in the course of my reading, I've really come across two things. That is privacy by design and privacy by default. So please, could you just kindly throw more insight on those two concepts and how it can actually help the startup sector, like privacy by design and privacy by default. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that question. I remember I wrote something on that in 2023. You can search for understanding privacy enhancing technology. Um, you can search for it. Let me just copy it in the I'll put it in the. So that's a very, 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 very important question. You know, I rounded up my discussion by saying that every organization, you should consider privacy as you are developing your product, your services, your technology. So when we say privacy by design means that you consider privacy at every stage of your development. So when I say at every stage of your development, that affects product and services you are building, that affects the growth of your organization, so that you don't think, oh, I'm just starting business, I don't need the understanding of privacy and data protection. It's that is for big companies. No, incorporate all these things into your growth, into your development. So when we say privacy by design, let me give you a short um, relatable example. I love to use this example when I teach data protection. When you come into an organization and they say, oh, there's a log book at the security stand, you have to put down your name, your address, your information, just to show that you are coming into this, just to document your log, your attendance in that premises. Most of the time, what is obtainable in Nigeria is, or in most places, when I come, I'm able to see every person that have been into that premises, into that facility that day. In fact, maybe I'm even number 21. I'll be able to see 1 to 20. Do you even think about privacy by design before you roll out such log? Because I may be coming for interview, and who knows, my boss came into that, my boss is coming after me and just notice that, oh, so Bibitayo is in this premise. What is he doing? This worker, we didn't send him here. So you consider privacy when you implement, let's say, a log that I will put my name and nobody will be able to see it. In fact, I was in Bank of Industry one day and I appreciated it well because they implemented something like that. That contactless register. I'm putting down my information and nobody is going to see it. It's going to appear underneath. So anyone coming, including me writing, I can't see it. And that's privacy by design. So let's now go into something more technical. You want to build an application, right? At every stage of development of that application, even AI. So when I teach about AI, intersection of AI and privacy also, I say this a lot. At every point of development, you are thinking, how is this thing going to affect people? How is this thing going to affect the right of privacy of people? So what can we do to 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 mitigate this risk? So you are thinking of, oh, so my app is going to collect information. There is a digital form on the app. Okay, so what should I put here? I need to put privacy notice. I need to put privacy policy. I have to document consent. Don't forget, we discuss consent. All those principles that we've discussed, you think about them while you are building products, while you are building services, not just for people building services alone. Oh, I have an organization where we are conducting outreach. We want to we want to do this event for, let's say, less privileged students, and we'll be taking their pictures, we'll be taking their videos. Have you considered privacy in that development? Oh, we need to put in place photo consent. We need to seek the consent of their parents, especially for those ones that are not up to 18-year-old. So that is privacy by design. It is not just in designing technology, it is even in designing your product. Okay, you have a KYC form or you have a form for your employee. Do you consider privacy by limiting the information you want to collect to the only information that is necessary for that particular operation? You don't collect more than enough. Less is even more. So I don't know if I've answered your question. Please, did I answer your
Yes,
question?
yes, please. You have. Thank you so much. You
Okay,
have.
let me just copy this link. This link discuss privacy enhancing technology, right? And I cannot keep on talking about this, so I will just refer you to what I've done in the past. So I promised you to share with you a few things on what the regulator requires you. So most of the things we've discussed, we need to discuss them the way we discuss them because you have to understand them from the legal perspective, but there are more to it. Like I work for an organization that my organization is Data Pro Limited, and one of our slogan is practice over theory. By the time I start discussing the theoretical aspect of this thing, which I don't have time to, so most of the time I request people to, let's say, book a strategic session with us. So now look at RMB. RMB, Rand Merchant Bank, is a multinational, is a subsidiary of, why am I even going into that discussion? What I want to share with you is privacy policy on the website. And let me start from the cookies notice. See, as the website comes up, cookies notice pop up. That's to tell you that, okay, on this website, we collect cookies. And when you get to any website, in fact, even your own website, if you don't know if you collect cookies or not, look at where I want to click up here beside the URL. If you click it, you see different options, cookies and site data. See, you'll be able to see the number of cookies that is implemented on your website. We have 4 on this website. So usually every website comes with cookies, except at least one, except if it has been removed. So cookie helps you to optimize users' experiences. So there are cookies that comes naturally or automatically with your website. So it documents the experiences of end users. And because you collect cookies data, you must have cookies policy on your website, and you must have a means of procuring consent of end user to use cookies. So it is now the best practice here is that your cookies notice must have a means of an option to accept cookies, option to reject cookies, and option to manage cookies. So for instance, you can click cookie setting and you just come and check the accept the one you want or the one you don't want, or you can come back here and accept every cookie, but that doesn't affect the one that are necessary. So there are necessary cookies on the website that you cannot do anything about. So, but what we are trying to say in essence is you have deployed cookies on your website, you need to collect consent. You need to document consent. So there is ISO, uh, I can't remember the ISO, but there is an international standard that requires you to document consent. So there's consent receipt and uh, consent record and consent receipt. So this is for cookies. Let's check for the privacy notice. So privacy most of the time is always at the bottom of the website, and it should be in the act requires that it must be in a conspicuous part of the website. You don't need to be looking for it here and there. Let's check UBA. So you see UBA also option to accept cookies, reject cookies, and cookie setting. I don't want any cookies to track me. So you will see privacy policy somewhere. Where is it? See it here. And every privacy policy should have basic information like what data we collect about you, basic data we collect about you, uh, how do we collect the data, what do we do with that data, um, yes, what is the the storage policy, retention policy for that data? Do we share your data with any organization? What data security have we put in place to ensure data security of your organization? Mm, 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 mm. So that's what I want to share with you. I've shoot beyond time. I can go on and on discussing privacy, right? But let me just stop here. I have quite a number of things in my head, but I can't keep you waiting here for the whole day. So let me just stop here, and we will continue next week dealing with data security, looking into endpoint security. In short, Oladayo, a cybersecurity lawyer, will be taking us. Of course, I, I don't want to be the one taking. Um, I don't even want to actually do anything, right? But situations warranted me to just come up and save this this stage this afternoon. So that will take us into data security next week. And if you don't have that other side, that other knowledge, you may not have a balanced knowledge. Oh, I'm just seeing Nana's message. Oh, Nana, I'm so sorry. So sorry, please. I just have to save the stage. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I hope you find value. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. Yes, thank you so much once again for your attendance and for listening. So I want to round up. I want to just close this meeting now. But before I do that, I want to confirm if any person have anything to say before we close out from this meeting. Anyone, please. Okay, so in the absence of none, thank you for your patience. I remain Bibitayo Ojo. Ikionana Ezekiel started this class. And Oladayo Akimokun will continue next week. So please do well to join again next week. Thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Bye.